start off talking about what begins the painting. I'm William Price. That's my work there.
Oh, I'm Mark Flowers. My work is right here.
I'm Lynn, Bregman, Blass, and I'm right here.
And I'm Joanie Krug, and I'm the work that has to be identified. My work is a figurative.
You guys sound like 60 Minutes.
Yes. I know who's going to interview us. So how did we start? You know, we started by having a great conversation at Joanie's table. And in the middle, we just started, and then someone said, okay, stop, because we can't burn this material.
Or we can't remember it.
But now I have no memory. But
Yeah.
it was
Well, it was a
brilliant.
while ago.
And I know, Mark, you were talking a little bit more about, like, as you've gotten older, how you're approaching your work when you kids.
Well, I think I've always, my work has always been mostly autobiographical. Most of it is about things that have happened to me, but then translated in some sort of poetic, visually poetic way. The start, I don't think it starts out being what they end up. Because I've used photographic elements in my work for a couple of decades, I find now that photographs, I guess about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I really needed to have ownership of the photography elements in my work. I was going to flea markets. There's some great guy online that has a warehouse full of black and white photographs that you can just send him $50 and he'll send you a box. It's somewhere in New York. And so I would use those and find this sort of thread of things and it would illustrate some things that have happened to me. But it came to a point where I needed authenticity to everything I did. There was just something I decided that, okay, the Bard stuff, which certainly has historical references and all that in art, that made it okay. It didn't make it okay with me. So, I kept going, wow, man, where can I find photographic element stuff? And all of a sudden, I would be deliberate it started out riding a commuter train. Downtown Baltimore to the outskirts and back, stuck my phone on the window and took about 1,000 photographs and just said, what's going to happen from here? That started something. There's been basic elements. I've always liked movement and stillness. I've always liked texture relationships. So those kind of rudimentary things are where things start. The relationships that form and so forth, and sometimes photographs offer that. Like for instance, in this piece, which Mark Bettis, who owns a gallery down in the River Arts District, got into some sort of Facebook argument with somebody about authenticity of one of his artists, AI works and stuff, and there was, he, I think, took it to heart a little bit. I wrote him and said, well, who cares? If they're using it in a way that is appropriate. And it dawned on me that, the title of this piece is My Personal AI. These are all photographs I've taken, and I've sort of created this collage and have done these things with scrap wood and so forth. And, it comes at a rhythm, it comes at a pace, yada, yada. I can't believe I just did a Seinfeld. So it just comes together. And I think, and I was telling somebody recently that the paintings I did before, the sort of narrative, poetic, visual poetic things, I knew what they were going to look like 10 steps down the road before they were even finished. These paintings, I never know what's going to happen. I've discovered I'd rather be entertained in the studio than anything else. Because I'm painting these for me. Maybe there's some relationships with people who see them and so forth, but I'm entertaining myself. And so halfway through, I'm thoroughly convinced this is a dog of a painting, and if I was in my late 20s and early 30s, I'd just paint it over and move on and start over. But now that I'm 72, I know that all I need to do is sit with it, and it'll solve itself. Because whatever I've got as in my back pocket and whatever I can pull out as a way to solve a painting will show up eventually. Sometimes I have to walk out of the room, sometimes I have to leave it alone for a couple days, but it always gets solved. And it's, I think, the belief of someone my age in what I can do versus the belief of what I was in my 20s. Then you go, I don't know. But, so these are, and again, I'm going a little too long. So that's really where it starts. There's this sort of relationship, a form, image, whatever. It eventually finds its way to maybe a meaning, which may be the title. I used to not title my work, and somebody came up to me and said, "Oh man, number 22, love it." I had no idea what. So you got to put a title in front of it. You kind of go, "Oh, that one." Anyway.
Changes, and I have a reputation with my art friends and critiques that I've been in that if I get impatient with a piece, I will paint over it immediately. So some of you might know that about me. Friends that know I did one piece 1 week, and next time they'll come back and say, "What happened to it? It's gone." So most of the work that you see here have many lives underneath. But my inspiration, my motivation for painting is typically gestural, mostly women's gestural movement and relationships and the intimacy of relationships and how they get expressed all different ways in life. And I'm much more interested in a more abstract version of that and more, an impression of something not realistically described. I'm not as experienced as you are, Mark. My painting career basically took off right when COVID started, and I had the opportunity to take amazing Zoom workshops. So I always painted some and drew some, and then I retired from my professional career, and I had time, especially during COVID, and it just kind of blew me out of the water with what I was able to explore. And I'm still in a journey, I feel. And so my work feels like it's in a process, and I'm very impressionable with looking at work of other people all the time and trying to find my voice. But my works get started by being attracted to some kind of image, some kind of feeling, some kind of gesture. And I take reference photos myself. I use compilations of photos that I see, sometimes from life, sometimes from online, sometimes on my phone. But usually it becomes my own because it changes quite a bit in my process. And I might have a piece that takes very short time to do because initially it's very filled with energy and spontaneity, and I have the ability to stop at that point and preserve that. And then there are those moments when I overpaint, and then I have to take those steps back that Mark described and really slow down and see what it needs. So there's a kind of give and take with that in my process.
Thank you. Okay, so I am both an artist and I also have done psychotherapy for 40 years, and I think that doing psychotherapy has informed work because how I work, I've worked with both encaustic and mixed media. And encaustic, if ever a medium was the message, it's encaustic because you never lose the history of a painting. So it's why Jasper John started working with encaustic in his flag series, because when you put a stroke on most other paintings, everything that was underneath would disappear. With encaustic, it never disappears. So what's underneath, you can layer, scrape or torch it, and you can still find the history that is in there. And I think that I was drawn to that because time in their history is not a failure, but is just a step along the path. And I think with art, that's how I've had to define it for myself. So this one is encaustic, and the other ones are mixed media. Those I approach, and I, unlike, well, you always knew where you were gonna go. I had never had any idea where I'm gonna go. I just start, and I just look for where the light is, and I go towards it, and I realize I kind of live my life that way. And amazingly, I've gotten to this age, you know, unscathed pretty much. So it's the same with the art. This piece I had to, every time I get stuck, I stick a house on something. And this one, I put a house on it, and I hung it, and I lived with it, and I said, you know, that's such a cutback. And so I just took it off the wall, I covered it with a sheet, and I put it in the back of the building. And 6 months later, I came back to it and approached it and got rid of that stupid house and started again. And those are all, the totems are all about storytelling. And since psychotherapy is also about storytelling, that's and the picture down on the bottom, I'm also really moved by children's art. And the innocence of it, the non-judgment, the freedom in it. And on the bottom there is a painting that my granddaughter, 8 years old, she was 6 when she did that portrait. And then she said actually it wasn't her, it was her brother because he has pimples. So whoever it is, those are the kinds of things that inspire me. That painting is another story because it was another one of, it was ready, it was hung on the wall, it was ready, and I never felt complete or good about it. You know, I don't know, this idea of when do you finish. You finish when you feel complete with it. That never felt complete. So what I did, sort of the opposite of encaustic, where I can scrape down and find history and go from there. With acrylic and mixed media, you can't do that, so I just threw green paint on it. And I just threw all of this paint on it, thinking, okay, well now, there's no way around this. You just ruined this precious painting. And then I finished it in 2 hours. Nice. Because I could let go of that preciousness. And so I don't know if that's the whole story about how I start or how my work evolves, but it's a big part of it. So.
Thank you.
This thing, you often have to sacrifice, almost always have to sacrifice something you love at some point. It's just, you're painting around it for like days and days, and you're loving it, but you're going to have to lose it because painting has evolved past that thing, whatever it is, just this pink line or whatever it is. It's hard for me to say. I mean, there are probably 5 or 6 ways that I enter into a painting. And I think for all of them, it's a little bit like I was thinking about this. Dowsers use pendulum. And I spent some time with dowsers. You don't start with the pendulum just sitting there still. They always get it in motion. And then it starts to go left or right. It's just very hard for the universe to get that, to overcome the inertia of that still pendulum. And I think I get things going on the canvas in the same way. And then as I work, I spend a lot of time in the woods, and I get very intimate with plants or streams or certain trees or the weather. When I'm back in the studio, I'm working on the painting, and that experience, that specific plant, or the light on the stream, somehow is suggested by what's going on. And I just developed that. And at a certain point, I have to admit, yeah, this is about the light playing on the stream. Or this is about that little painting over there. It turned out to be about cut leaf tooth board. pretty common wildflower we have, that I've known for years, but somehow this year I sat with the plant and talked with it for quite a long time and made some drawings, and I didn't know that was going to go into painting, that I had worked on that little painting for weeks, so that's often how it happens. Technically, something I do a lot is, let's say it's a canvas, or it could be a sheet of paper. I will approach it and start drawing with my eyes closed, and with a pen, usually on the canvas. And when you do that, you've let go of what it looks like, or how if it's going to be good, or what anybody's going to think of it. You're in a different tactile kind of aesthetic world, and you feel the contour of someone's face, or the texture of a tree bark. You feel it, and you just didn't know you were going to draw that, but here it's coming out, and I just let it go for as long as I can, for a long time, and I don't know if it's a composition or not. And at a certain point, I sort of come to an end with that. Maybe I'll back up and say, well, it's kind of, I want to do something over here, and I'll go back to it. But I love doing that, and often I'm freed up then to paint the sound of the brook, or the sound of the wind in the trees, which is one of my favorite things to experience. And in fact, here's one story about how the painting gets started. Many years ago, I'm going to talk about the painting on my easel right now in the studio. Many years ago, when I lived in New Jersey, I was up on a mountain in the winter, and there was about 3 inches of new snow on the ground, and the hush of the snow in the woods, walking the edge of the woods along the meadow, and this chickadee flew right past my ear. And it was so intimate, so close, it was like it whispered to me. And I immediately thought, how could I paint that? And I've carried that with me for all these years, and now 30 years later, I did a little watercolor study just saying, I'm going to play around with it. And I kind of talked to the chickadees too, and let them talk to me, and they said, yeah, this is a fun kind of thing. So of course, that's black-capped chickadee. We have mostly Carolina chickadees here, different calls. So I started to draw with the pen, with my eyes closed. The song of it, the flutter of the wings, I just let that onto the canvas, and then it's just, I have to then let go of that specific thing and let it be what it needs to be. But it started out very gray and white and black, like the chickadee. But, their life is really intense and colorful and bright. So that's what gets into the painting. So it's that kind of thing. It's a story that evolves as I'm working on it, and I have the same experience of if it gets to a point where it's going down, it's just gone dead. I know that I can pull it out after all these years.
Yeah.
So that's a hint of what goes on.
Is this a good time to say that? I was going to say there's going to be another talk at the closing reception, so that's next Friday.
Right.
So it's going to be Friday. So
It's titled Secrets Revealed, which we made that up at the time. So
I want to hear some secrets.
okay, well you'll have to write yours down. You'll have to write yours down. So
This is the real part of the state.
oh, we'll make up yours. Don't worry. We got it. We got it.
Only the good ones.
Thank you for standing.
Yeah, thank you.